On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, the Oklahoma City Thunder work through a perfect week, an 11-win streak for the Thunder, but a tough schedule rests ahead. We're going to preview that and also some New Year resolutions for the Thunder.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I'm your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. On today's show, we're joined by Michael Martin at Michael on Sports on Twitter. Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube. We're going to discuss the Thunder's perfect week, their 11-game winning streak, the tough schedule ahead, even though they're all at home, and some New Year's resolutions for this Thunder team and what you want to see from them continue to build on in the new year. But Michael, how you doing after the first wave of the holidays?
Feeling good. We're surviving. I think everybody put on a few pounds of just holiday weight and cheer here, but ready for the new year, ready for some more Thunder basketball, always ready to talk basketball with you. It's
going to be a lot of fun. What do you got cooking up at Let's Talk Thunder? I know that you had the Christmas flashback with all the Christmas past games, which was really good, and also whenever you give a shout out to Christmas Vacation, I'm always a sucker for that. But what do you got cooking up over there?
A couple things. I think the next one up on the docket will be something on Ajay Mitchell, just talking about the Thunder, sort of unearthing him, which I'm sure we'll get to and talking about the last four games. But he's just been an incredible revelation for this Thunder team, especially off the bench as a rookie, and just a really great contributor all around.
Yeah, AJ's been spectacular. Wrote about him this morning for Thunder on SI, Monday morning for Thunder on SI. Talked to Shai and Mark about his impact, especially his impact alongside Shai, which is what stood out over these couple of games. We've seen that pairing grow, and their on-off numbers are pretty impressive, which we're going to get to coming up. But whenever we were last discussing the Thunder, we were talking about this stretch of Washington, Indiana, Charlotte as a requirement to go 3-0, even though it's really hard to win this league because of what laid ahead, where you had Memphis, you had Minnesota, the Clippers, the Knicks, and the Celtics all in this 5-game homestand. Now, it didn't end up being to where Memphis was not Memphis. They were the Memphis Hustle in this game, and so you blew them out to capitalize on a perfect 4-0 week. But I still think that taking care of business deserves some credit, even though you played a lackluster Memphis team, you played a Hornets team without LaMelo, without Brandon Miller. They still had to go out there and execute, and they really did, even though at times it looked dicey, like it looked dicey in Indiana. You didn't score for the first 3 minutes last night. We know about how they played around with Washington a little bit, but overall, what were kind of your biggest takeaways from a perfect week?
Seemed like a tale of two different series in terms of the four games. We had two gutsy wins and then two rickety games in which the Thunder sort of righted the ship and took care of business. Washington, the defense was sort of just flat. It came out. I mean, J-Dub talked about that in postgame. And sort of the same thing happened with the Hornets, but in the end, the Thunder used their high-end talent, experience, execution. They get the win. And then on to the other two games. The Pacers, I think that's a game we're going to look back and talk about with Shai's MVP campaign, because he was just incredible in that game. But that's one where the Thunder just really showed out and did what they needed to do and took care of business against a pretty talented Pacers team, which made a bunch of threes, like I sort of talked about, is like that's the one way they lose. And then against the Grizzlies, yeah, they were shorthanded, number of impactful injuries. So were the Thunder. Not as many, but still impactful guys. The Grizzlies get out to a 9-0 start, and it was kind of like, oh, what's going to happen? Second night of a back-to-back. But then the Thunder just sort of take over, led behind Shai, and take care of business. And like you said, like, the expectation's a win, but that doesn't mean that you can't be happy about it. And the reality is a lot of these teams do get caught up. Like the Celtics just got caught by somebody a couple games ago. It was this Pacers team and I think somebody else who got them. So just because that's the expectation doesn't mean you can't still be excited, because these 10, 11, 12 game win streaks are definitely an abnormality.
Yeah, and this is something that is tough to do. If they win on New Year's Eve against Minnesota, they'll have matched their all-time best winning streak of 12 in OKC history. But they have been on a run here this season of playing banged up opponents, and Thunder themselves have been banged up from the word go. I mean, they did not have Kenrich or Jay Will or Hartenstein to start the year. They lost Chet in short order after 10 games. Caruso's been in and out of the lineup. And then they've seen Isaiah Joe miss a chunk of time. They've seen Lou Dort and Kaysen miss a game. Like, they've been banged up in their own right, but they've also played a no KD Suns and no Steph Warriors team. The Nuggets, which is a game where Denver won without Jamal or Aaron Gordon. No Luka with the Mavs, a Spurs team without Wemby. Of course, we just mentioned LaMelo and Brandon being out for Hornets, and the Grizzlies not having Durant or Edey. But it's tough to make a ton of granular takeaways whenever this is the kind of deck that's been stacked. Number one, a lot of stuff changes for the Thunder when Chet is back and when Cruz is back. So no matter who you were playing against, if you're fully healthy or not, you would still be trying to put the pieces together in your mind of what it looks like when those two guys are healthy. And then number two, of course, you're playing now what is the second best team in the West on paper, but in reality, it is a G League roster on Sunday. I think that you should be excited about the Thunder winning if you're a Thunder fan. Like you said, it's really tough to take care of business in this league. But as far as trying to pull anything from these games, I think back to the stuff that Sam was talking about in the summertime of whenever you're evaluating a player, there's like these electric moments where it kind of jars you when you're watching them and something really pops at you. I think that you're just looking for those kind of things, like with Ajay Mitchell, where like he makes two straight defensive plays and comes down the floor and gets an and one, like those kind of things that really give you a jolt when you're watching and saying, I wonder how realistic that is and how scalable that is. And so that's more so what you're looking for versus anything else about like matchups or who you would or wouldn't want to play or who you do or don't have their number, because you just haven't gotten the benefit of playing healthy teams, which is something that the Thunder really want to do.
Yeah, I think that this team desperately just says, I don't know the exact words, but just sort of wants to be tested in a way of just seeing where they're at in sort of the grand scheme of things. I mean, they got that sort of against Milwaukee under some weird circumstances, but I think they sort of just want to see over and over again where they stand in the league among these other great teams, and hopefully in this 4-game road homestand with what's left, they get that. But I'm with you. I think that overall the big scheme things, like the large big picture things, it's hard to take away a lot from when you're looking at these games where there's some major injuries and contributors missing. But you can look at the little things of just like looking at how J-Dub's playing recently, looking at Shai as the primary facilitator and creator and sort of what they look at, like without him on the floor. You mentioned Ajay Mitchell. In the past 4 games, he's averaging 13, 5, 2 on 65, 58, 75 shooting splits. He got his first double-double in his career and his first career start. So there are still things you can take out of, but yeah, you're not going to get the massive, I guess, back and forth swaying, overarching sort of things that we're talking about where you're matching up and you're talking about what will they look like against the Mavericks in the playoffs potentially, or the Grizzlies or the Nuggets or so on. But there's still a lot of games left, and the reality is we're going to get those answers sooner than later. And in these past seasons, like, you mentioned the longest winning streak in Thunder history. I don't think a lot of people are remembering back then how many teams they beat that were injured. So this could all just be a moot point at the end.
Yeah, I think that none of it really matters as long as you win. If you would have dropped some of these games where you're playing banged up teams, I mean, you remember the freak out. They've only lost 5 times, and there was some great freak out over losing that Denver game whenever they didn't have Jamal, didn't have Gordon, and rightfully so. I mean, that was a game you should have won, and again, it did come down to it. But coming up, Thunder are going to have those tests, and they're going to have those tests really quickly to end this homestand, and in short order after that on the road. We'll talk about that coming up. But first, let's hear right now about our good friends over at Rocket RX. Rocket RX is there for you because if you are ready to boost your confidence and take control in the bedroom, Rocket RX has the solution. Imagine feeling more prepared in performing at your best. That's what you can do with Rocket RX. They make it simple and stress-free. Rocket RX offers FDA-approved treatments for erectile dysfunction at a low cost than any other brand alternative. No more uncomfortable doctor visits or pharmacy trips. Everything is delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging. With Rocket RX, you'll get trusted care from a real U.S. clinical team. Complete a quick 100% online consultation, and you'll get your free prescription today. Visit rocketrx.com to get started now. It only takes 2 minutes. Who amongst us doesn't? Right now, our listeners can get 40% off your first order when you use Locked On NBA. That's RocketRx.com, code Locked On NBA for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions apply. RocketRx, better sex made simple. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Joining us today is Michael Martin at Michael on Sports, and Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube. Michael, the homestand was supposed to tip off with a bang yesterday, and the hits just kept coming. I mean, we knew that Ja was going to be dealing with something after that game against New Orleans, but an hour before tip-off, now Zach Edey's out too, which would have been so fun to see how he changed this game defensively for the stints that he was in the game. But ultimately, a 130-106 win over Memphis for the Thunder. But now you play a Minnesota team that projects to be fully healthy, and they just got a big win on Christmas. They had a thrilling game against the Spurs yesterday. And Ant versus Shai is always a fun matchup. Rudy at the rim versus a drive-heavy team is always a fun matchup. So, that's a test. The Clippers, who are making some noise right now, of course, without Kawhi yet, that's going to be a lot of fun to see them with OKC, because the last time these two teams played, the Thunder didn't have a center on the roster, and it was Jada playing center, and you still really liked what you saw from Oklahoma City. Now, how much better does it look with an actual center? And then you have New York and Boston to end the homestand here, this 5-game trip. New York and Boston both projected to be healthy in these two games as Eastern Conference contenders. First of all, which matchup are you most interested in? If we're both agreeing with what Shai said last night of we're ready to see this team get tested, which of these games do you think provides the most test material to take away from and study?
I think it's got to be the Celtics matchup. I mean, obviously it's the defending champions, but they're sort of a similar, not a mirror image, but they're very similar to the Thunder in sort of 5-out spacing. You can also play big. They want to get some threes. They want to play in transition, some things. And I think that's really going to be the big test against a team like that has a lot of veteran experience, that just came off a title, like I mentioned. And I think that will be the one that we can sort of extrapolate the most of in terms of just getting a head count, or just do the measuring stick test for this team of where they are.
Yeah, Boston for sure is my 1-1 of games you're excited about. I mean, it's a 2:30 tip in the Paycom Center. You only get to see Boston twice a year, and like you mentioned, reigning champs. They do everything the right way, even if their record is technically, behind the Cavs and everything. I think that they're still the team to beat out east. I think that they're still the team to beat in the NBA. And so seeing that up close and personal, and two styles that are pretty similar, to where you feel like if anyone is equipped to defend each other, it's these two teams. We'll see if Caruso's back in that game. That would be a huge difference maker. We'll see if he's even back on New Year's Eve. The injury report, I have not seen it yet today, so we'll see if they post it during the show. We have been known to get some breaking news during the show with Michael Martin, so make sure we stay in tune with that. My other one is tough, and Caruso's out tomorrow. So there it is. Caruso and Chet are out, and of course Flagler, Dukas, and Topic are out too. My other one of this list is either New York or Minnesota. Clearly, I mean, no offense to the Clippers, they're a fun, scrappy story, but they're going to be fit. They're going to be fourth on the next 4 games. But is it crazy to think that like number 2, despite them being worse than the New York Knicks as a team, is Minnesota, just because they have Rudy Gobert at the rim, they have an explosive star, which New York does too, but they don't have a Rudy Gobert at the rim to really disrupt your offense. And you're going to play them without the benefit of Caruso. So if your offense is laboring, how do you navigate that defensively to keep them in check, which with Julius Randle on the court should be pretty easy. He kind of keeps them in check himself. But nonetheless, I am interested to see what this matchup looks like, because last year they played 4 just incredible games. As a basketball fan, no matter who won or lost, it was just fun to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, and this is another one of those matchups where I think the Hartenstein signing is going to really come into effect. Obviously, Chet's not playing, so that's a massive factor in this one, and Caruso's not going to be playing either, but I don't blame you. I would still side with the Knicks as the tougher one. I think this one will come down to, with Minnesota, is just a lot of the three-point shooting, because the thing is with this Thunder team, you can write home about it all you want, you can talk about it all day like we have, it's the turnovers being generated, and I don't trust a single primary ball handler on that team. like Mike Conley's the closest thing, and he is, as washed as possibly can be right now in terms of just like having a great career, but he's not the same guy. Rob Dillingham doesn't really play, and even if he does, I don't want him getting thrown into the gauntlet over there. Anthony Edwards, good player, not a great decision maker, and the same thing you can say for a guy like Julius Randle. So I think that could be really the tipping point for this. But then again, if it comes down to something where the Thunder where they're just getting murdered at the free throw line in terms of the differential, and then you have some different guys like Anthony Edwards hit 7 threes or whatever it is, then you could get yourself in some trouble. But I think the turnovers are really going to be the end-all be-all of this game.
Yeah, I'm excited for both. I think in terms of star power, it is New York. I think stylistically, Minnesota does present a pretty big threat in terms of trying to get the Thunder offense in a groove, in a rhythm. And we did call it. We are correct. Minnesota's fully healthy. Their only players listed as out are Jalen Clark, Rob Dillingham with an ankle injury, Jesse Edwards, and Luka Garza, with Daishen Nix being questionable with an ankle injury. So non-factors, with all due respect to those guys. They are fully healthy. That's going to be a lot of fun on New Year's Eve, the annual New Year's Eve game in the Paycom Center. But, Michael, this is the most difficult stretch. Looking back at the schedule, it's the most difficult stretch for us to try to nail down because we know the Thunder are not going to win 12, 13, 14, 15 in a row. That would be cause for celebration. But they're also not going to lose every single game. Like, these are all really tough games. Are they capable of losing 3 of these games? Absolutely. I just think that the Thunder, like I've shown you, like their response to losses, their resiliency shows that they're not going to go on a skid like that, to where I kind of lean win Minnesota on New Year's Eve, win against the Clippers, and then you split New York and Boston.
Yeah, I don't think I can really push back on that all that much. I mean, for my prediction on this, I want to remind everyone before I get pitchforked here that I have predicted the Thunder to go 3-0, 2-1 in a lot of these throughout the season, but I think this is one where they get caught and they go 2-2. I think they lose the back half, both those games, the Knicks and the Celtics. The Knicks, in big part because it is the second night of a back-to-back against a really good New York team. And the Knicks, I think part of their game plan is they have way more offensive firepower than that Milwaukee team, but they're a team I can see where the Thunder can't stay with them, where their defense can do enough, but the offense for the Thunder doesn't come around enough, and you see the Knicks pull out a win in that one on the second night of a back-to-back. And against the Celtics, I think this is one of those matchups where we all know the truth about it, but this is one of the matchups in particular where you're really going to see sort of the hole that is left by Chet not being there, and that you really need him to compete and win a 7-game series against a good team like this. Could the Thunder win? Yes, but I think this is one of those matchups in particular where you're going to get a preview of just like, hey, we really need to see this team fully healthy to know.
Yeah, I think that they for sure could go 2-2. I'm going to go 3-1. You're going to go 2-2. Now, there has not been very many stretches of the season where we could kind of go doomsday scenario, but there's a possibility that they only win one of these 4 games and go 1-3. I don't think that that'll happen, but if there was ever a stretch to go 1-3, this is the most explainable stretch that we've ever had with a fully healthy Timberwolves team, projected to be fully healthy in the New York and Boston team, and then the Clippers in there who are kind of scrappy and tough. So I would still stick with 3-1, but it's clear how much variance there is in a week like this, and that's why this is the homestand that we've been craving, is because they can legitimately lose every single game. The Thunder have proven over the course of really the Mark Daigneault tenure, but especially the last couple of years, they're not going to drop stupid games. You've watched Thunder teams in the past who their identity was dropping stupid games. That's not this team's identity. So, there's been very seldom stretches where it felt like, oh my gosh, like this could be really brutal, and this is one of them that feels like it could be tough. But by the same token, what would be more shocking? Let me put it this way. If I told you that the Thunder went 4-0 or 1-3, which one of those is the most jarring to your system?
1-3, I think it would probably be. But I think you're right in the point of just there have been Thunder teams where their trademark was dropping to inferior opponents. And this Thunder team, I think in particular, there's some conversation with the fan base about just like, are they beating up on some bad injured teams? And this is where you really want to see it, because obviously no one wants to lose to bad teams, but by sort of that notion, it then puts more pressure on some of these bigger games. But I'd say it's more shocking that they'd go 1-3, but I'm right there with you in terms of like Minnesota can be dangerous. I think the Clippers are a little bit underrated just in terms of like having James Harden as an offensive engine, and they're really good defensively for a James Harden team. You wouldn't think so, but Ty Lue does a great job, and they're a team that's also capable of just nailing a bunch of threes and then stalling you out where the Thunder don't make enough. But I'm curious to hear what you think. I already gave my case on the Knicks and the Celtics as being really tough games, but I think that 1-3 would be more jarring than 4-0.
Yeah, I think that 1-3 would be as well, just because of what we already have discussed about the response to bad games, the response to losses. To go 1-3, you clearly need to lose a couple in a row, and I just don't see this happening. And I don't say that baselessly. I don't say that reacting to the best start in team history, where you're 26-5. But look at last year. I mean, last year this team never went on a losing streak larger than 2 until the last week of the year, whenever Shai was out with a quad injury, and it was just kind of a part of the season where you were comfortable losing games for the betterment of Shai's quad. But the entire season up until that point, they'd only gone on 2-game losing streaks, and they had been able to get up and respond to games time and time again, and on very few of those 2-game winning streaks to boot. So I just really trust this team to not let some of that stuff spiral. But when you look at that Clippers game, one of the latest reports, if you want to trust it, is that the Kawhi return is set to be January 4th. So won't see him on January 2nd in that case. That's right around the target date where you could see this Clippers team without Kawhi for now, and then when you get them later on in the season, maybe they'll have them. Actually, I think the Thunder are done with the Clippers after this game. So you could avoid the Clippers having Kawhi the whole year. And the January 4th thing, just as an update for if you're worried about Kawhi's status. But I think that this team will go 3-1. I think that it would be shocking if they went 4-0. But if they did go 4-0, Michael, we got to do something crazy on the next pod. So the next pod that we did together would be Tuesday, January 7th. We have to do something crazy if they go 4-0. I don't know what it is. We'll let the comment section decide it within reason. But coming up, let's talk about New Year's resolutions. But first, let's see right now. But our friends over at Rocket Money, go check out Rocket Money today, because did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot or were paying twice? Because they did for me. One of the most embarrassing things is that for a whole year, I was paying for both Apple Music and Spotify. For what reason, I'll never know. But Rocket Money flagged that and said, hey, bozo, you're paying for both of these things. Should we stop it? And I said, absolutely, you should stop it and save me some money. Rocket Money is the personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and help lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everyone closer together in one place, because whenever you can save on subscriptions and spending habits, you can then treat your loved ones or whoever to a fun night together. So with your goals in mind this year, perhaps you're looking to get ahead on your finances and save some money. Rocket Money, with over 5 million users, has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions. So saving members up to $740 a year when using the app's premium features. For me, again, it was this subscription tracker that really helped me get ahead. I was paying like 2 different music. I was paying 2 different basketball reference subscriptions somehow on 2 different email accounts. I don't know why that was. You can go check them out today at Rocket Money. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockdown today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockdown today. rocketmoney.com/lockdown. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. Michael, it is New Year's Eve. The Thunder do play tonight in their annual tradition to play at the Paycom Center on the holiday. Are you a big New Year's Eve resolution guy, or has that something been that not a part of your bag yet?
I'd say I'm a New Year's resolution failure type of guy in terms of like I make a couple and then just they give out really, really quickly. But to stay in the spirit here, this time it's going to be different. That's what I can tell you.
I hope that's true. I mean, who amongst us has not failed at at many New Year's Eve resolutions, but do you do the whole eat a black olive? What are you supposed to eat during New Year's for a New Year's? I don't do any of that stuff, but I know a lot of people do. I'll tell you what I do is drink sparkling cider. It's a tradition, non-alcoholic sparkling cider. It's great stuff, but also run on that stuff early. You need to get that stuff before Christmas, because if you wait around, oh my gosh, I had to go to 4 different Targets today to find some. Now, back to the discussion at hand. New Year's resolutions for this Thunder season. It can be about the NBA at large. It can be about the Thunder as a team. It can be about individual players in the NBA or on the Thunder. Michael, I'll let you go first.
Number one, the Thunder obviously, playing really well, but they're 16-2 when Kaysen starts this season, and I would like to see Kaysen be the permanent starter, at least until we see when Chet gets back, and you can reevaluate if you want to go double big. But anyone, Rylan in particular, but anyone who's been listening to these pods for a long time that I've been on, I've been one of the bigger proponents pounding the drum of the Thunder don't need to set a starting lineup. They can just kind of shuffle guys in and out depending on matchup. At this point, I have seen enough, and I'd like to see Kaysen just be the permanent starter until Chet comes back, as I just previously mentioned. I think he just fits a lot more holes. I think a lot of those guys like Wiggs and Joe are really dynamic players, but a lot better coming off the bench. But overall, my New Year's resolution would be to see Kaysen be a starter a majority of the time until we get into the sort of return dates for Chet.
So I'd completely agree with that resolution. I think that'd be a great goal for the Thunder to have, because they're just so much better. He just sets a tone defensively that cannot be matched by the other two guys. And then with Isaiah Joe, I mean, it is jump off the page bad, his shooting splits whenever he's a starter versus a reserve. He's just a more comfortable player off the bench. And right now he's not shooting the ball well anyway. But the best way to get the most out of him will be, I think, off the bench. And every data point suggests that, but they still do shift over the starting five some. I did like what we saw from Ajay Mitchell in the starting five, though, in Charlotte, and him playing with Shai extended minutes against Memphis. That's something to monitor moving forward. But I do think that Kaysen is the best option to start games. Even if he doesn't have like the loud box scores, his game isn't really predicated on rhythm and touches. Whereas like with Isaiah Joe and a shooter like that, you want to get them going early. You want to find them, but it's really hard to do that whenever you have a guy like Shai and J-Dub. You have Lou, who's going to take shots, and that's not a slight to him, but he's going to take shots. And then like the ease of which you can get Hartenstein some shots, to where theoretically you could start a game where it's 2 J-Dub shots, it's a Shai shot, it's an Isaiah roll and a Lou Dort 3, and Isaiah Joe hasn't done anything yet. And like that really impacts like how a shooter can get into a groove. And then defensively, this is a drop off that you'd rather have Kaysen, to where Kaysen has inconsistent offensive games, but it's not because of like rhythm or things of that nature. He reads the floor really well. He's able to cut off of those guys and play off of them really well, to where he's doing his job no matter what his point column says. And sometimes it's going to be rewarded, like those cuts and the floating to the dunker spot will be rewarded with a double-digit game. And sometimes he's just there as a decoy, for lack of a better word, with his offensive game. So I think he's perfect in that starting five. I am curious about the double big stuff. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, but I have a lot of thoughts on that, including James Harden, Chris Paul comparisons. But my New Year's resolution, I'll do a Thunder one too. My New Year's resolution for this Thunder team is make your three-point shots. I mean, have you ever thought about that before? I mean, guys, listen, just make them. That's all you got to do. And so a Cameron Aggie legend, Hall of Famer Cameron Aggie, C.U. Eddie, one of the only super fan in the Cameron Aggie's Hall of Fame, by the way, he would always say a couple catchphrases. Number one, good steal, but he said it after a rebound. And people would yell at him, like, why are you doing that? And he said, well, we stole the possession. Can't argue that, really. But anyway, he also would say, don't take that three-point shot unless you know it's going in. Now, don't get that extreme for Oklahoma City, but hey, let's make some threes here in Oklahoma City. Last night was a really interesting look at the box score, because when the game was in the balance in the first half, they blew them out in the first half, but when they were playing more competitively, it was 45% shooting from the three-point line for the Thunder. When the game was all said and done, and you had garbage time minutes really from the onset after intermission, it drug down to 31% from three. So I think that if it's going to get lost in this stretch because the Thunder is shooting so cold, when we evaluate the stretch of games like in 2 weeks or even 2 days, we'll just say, oh, they shot bad against Memphis. They really didn't, though, because that percentage got drugged down by, one, garbage time, but also Shai, J-Dub, like they were taking some threes that if this game was closer, they wouldn't have been taking, to where they wouldn't have been missing, to where the percentage gets better. So let Memphis be the start of the turnaround from three.
Yeah, they were going for a few daggers there, and I agree with you. I mean, that was one of my favorite thoughts that I had was after game one between the Pelicans and the Thunder. It was like great adjustment by both teams to just make their threes in game two. Just really smart coaching by both staffs. But yeah, you'd like to see some more shooting going in because that just sort of elevates the ceiling of this team offensively where they can really open up those driving lanes for guys like Shai and Dub, and you can get in the two-man game pick and roll with Hartenstein, and he gets into those floaters and things. So I totally agree. I have one more Thunder one for you. Chet and J-Dub combine for over 10 free throw attempts per game for the rest of the season once Chet comes back. Currently, they're only at 8.2, with 3.3 of those from Dub and 4.9 from Chet. Free throws, obviously, massive storyline this year that we've talked about until everyone is just blue in the face about. But it may not seem like a massive deal adding 2 to 3 free throws per game, but in the grand scheme of things, I think it would go a long way and probably put a nice dent into some of these free throw differential numbers that we've seen this season.
Yeah, I love that. I think that free throws are the key to a lot. I mean, for one, they're just free points as long as you're relaxed at the line. And number two, it changes you as a player. Where we see guys take these scoring leaps, they mostly happen due to an increase in free throws. And the whistle has not been kind to Jalen Williams. It was actually pretty kind to Chet, all things considered, for a small sample size of games. But we'll see if that translates over to whenever he returns, whenever that may be. So I agree that if that happens, then the Thunder are well on pace to get out of the West and to have a really, really successful run. I'm going to go with an NBA one. New Year's resolution, no more talking ratings. Because I think that it's really explainable. The social media numbers are great. The interest is great. A lot of your NBA fans, though, are pretty savvy, and they're just watching illegal streams that you cannot do. And the only complaints about the league have nothing to do with what's happening on the floor, because you are just not watching basketball if you are not enjoying the NBA's product when you turn the game on. It's the surrounding stuff around the sport that is ruining basketball. It's the fact that Greg Olsen, I said this on the Christmas Day show, Greg Olsen and Tom Brady and every former NFL player and every NFL analyst would not dare say a bad word about the NFL product or about the sport or about the players. Like Greg Olsen is watching Kelsey and Kittle and all these tight ends, and he was a heck of a tight end in his own right. He's giving them nothing but attention, nothing but props, nothing but praise. That's the difference in these two sports. Whereas everywhere you turn around, people are beating into your head, these guys are soft, this league sucks, they take nights off, they're not like how we used to play. And it goes back to just basic psychology. The negative self-talk becomes the reality. But it's not true. It's not true at all. If you did not watch a single second of Inside the NBA, you would think that this is the heyday of the NBA. But you're being kind of manipulated in that way by the wrong people. So I just think that no more ratings talk, no more fixing the league, just watch basketball.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think it's mainly a presentation thing, whether it's like Stephen A. Smith and the halftime show with ESPN that's as long as a TikTok in a lot of ways, where it's like 60 seconds, throw to commercial, come back, Perks arguing about the GOAT debate in a game that is between the Knicks and the Spurs at 11 a.m. Just has nothing to do with it. And my last one is pretty similar in this, the idea that I have no more complaining without bringing fixes to the table. There are some concerns, and you can say they're valid or whatnot. I think that the people that say there are too many threes, I think it is getting to the point where, when teams are putting up 55 threes a game, it is kind of getting ridiculous. But if you're not going to come with some sort of solution, I just don't know what the point is other than to just be in an echo chamber of rage and anger on some of these things. Could the league be better? Absolutely. Is it bad? No. And we've romanticized some things, like all those TikTok edits and Instagram things and Twitter that you see of people talking about, back in the day, and they're talking about the mid-2000s, which was a terrible era for the NBA. is ridiculous, and they just have their nostalgia glasses on. But the reality is, like Steve Kerr talked about this a while ago, he said it's crazy how we've like evolved in every aspect of humanity, whether it be like medicine, technology, education. He goes, but athletes have gotten worse. And that's the crazy thing. He was joking around about it. But the thing is, players were talking about there were too many 3 games in 4 nights, too many back-to-back-to-backs, so the league ruled it out. And then now all the former players complain about how it's too soft that they don't have to do that, which it's like, didn't you guys want to get that removed? Didn't you guys want safer travel on private jets and better hotels and things? So it's just one of those circular reasoning things that people just like to complain about stuff. But I think that there is a responsibility that people like Stephen A., the Inside the NBA guys, and even us to a degree on a much smaller scale, of a responsibility of sort of being caretakers of the game and gatekeepers of the game. And if you're just crapping on it all the time, like at some point, you're going to have sort of a situation with like what baseball's gone through, where it's just killed a lot of the fan base because everyone has said it's bad for so long that people don't even give it a chance. But I can go on that spiel for a very long time, and I'm sure people would rather hear positive things. So more focused on the reality if the Thunder go 4-0 of what random thing people want us to do within reason.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point about baseball, they have made changes to the most historic game in America and the most long-standing game in America, and there's been changes that have been awesome. Mm-hmm. The problem is they let their reputation get to a point where now they're just outright ignored. When was the last time that you turned on one of those First Take shows or whatever your pop show is of sports culture, and they're talking baseball? I mean, this is not the Ed Sullivan Show. They're not talking baseball with Ed Randall. So I think that's where you want to avoid for the NBA is like baseball used to be king in America, even above football. They let themselves get drug into the mud to where then they were second, then they were third, then they were fourth, then they were just irrelevant. You don't want to let this narrative continue to expand that this game is just awful, while also acknowledging that you can make changes. And like baseball's pitch clock has been great. The rules about stealing bases has been great, where you can't just throw over 16 times in a row because you're scared to pitch to this batter. Quickening up intentional walks, like something as minor as that, of just throw one ball, it's over. Don't even throw a ball at all, it's over. Like that stuff has been great. And so like the NBA can make some changes to improve this game, but it's not as though it needs like a complete facelift and overhaul. One solution could be the upwards rule, and I'm an undefeated upwards head coach. So if we ever do go to the wristband system, where you've got to guard your same color wristband and stay in that area, call me up, Mark. I'll be able to strategize that for you and maybe fudge some numbers for you to where we get a green wristband on an orange guy. But anyway, another resolution will be, Michael, I really want to see people stop freaking out about positions. This is the 17th draft in a row where we've been sitting here saying like, oh my God, the Thunder are drafting another guard. And every year it works. I mean, these guys, there's just no positions anymore. Like, that's part of the new age of basketball. As Shai put it, like no matter if you're 5'10", or if you're 7'3", if you have feel, you can play in any level. Like this stuff, the positions do not matter at all. Ajay Mitchell's been great. Kaysen's been great. The Thunder clearly have been able to use them and have found a role for them and have found the ways to implement them while not suffering at other positions. So just don't care so much about what the position column says. I used to get upset with like Tom Crean, and we had a coach do it in the Lone Star Conference as well, where they listed everybody as a B, as a basketball player. And it's like, okay, dude, who are you trying to fool? Like the 7'3" guy is not going to be anything but a post player in college. But in the NBA, it does make sense to just like abandon positions entirely. Like just look at how they can function on the court versus what their height plus traditional point guard, shooting guard role would say.
Yeah, we're in a generation with super well-rounded players where positions are sort of just not even a big deal anymore. I think it is, positions do sort of give you, I guess, like a screenshot of the spark notes of what a guy can do. But the reality is it's less positions and more just roles and just spots on the floor that guys fill. Like Victor Wembanyama, rim protector, you need a rim protector. He's also a shooter. But wherever you get that from, it doesn't really matter. There's things like you need a ball handler, you need an initiator. Nikola Jokic does that. He's also a center, but he's not a rim protector. They have Aaron Gordon. They have different guys who fill different holes. It's just a matter of filling all those holes that you need on a basketball team. And the reality is with the Thunder, like you talk about drafting guards, they have two massive guards with Shai and Dub, so you can afford to play smaller guys next to them. Like, I remember going back a couple years ago, whenever the Thunder still were without Chet, and I asked Mark about this, about the size matchup of going against Cleveland, where they had Mobley and Allen, where you'd look at the Thunder with like JRE and Poku or whoever it was. You go, they're way overmatched. The size is just crazy. But then if you look at the guards, it's Mitchell and Garland versus Giddey and Shai, who are just towering over those guys. So the reality is you just need to take up space across the floor, and it's less about it's about getting big size on the floor, and guards are getting bigger. So people are saying it's too many guards, but the reality is, like, AJ Mitchell is a guard, but he's not small by any means. Cason Wallace, Lou Dort's even on the shorter side, but he's super strong. So I think it's one of those things where people can, it appears as one thing over another, where it's not like football where positions are not super interchangeable, but maybe this will be something that becomes even more common knowledge, because when you teach basketball on a small scale, that's what you do with kids. You're like, you're the center, you rebound, you try to block shots, you finish close to the rim. You're the point guard, you bring it up, you pass it to the guys. And that's really just what it is the table setter for like intro to basketball. But as we get more advanced, yeah, positions are sort of out the window.
Out the window. Michael, thank you for joining us on today's show. I hope everyone has a safe and happy New Year's Eve. No matter what you're doing, just stay safe while doing it. Michael, let them know one more time what you got cooking up at Let's Talk Thunder.
Just talking about AJ Mitchell being some of this sort of this unearthed diamond in the rough steal for the Thunder as they get another second round guy like they did with Wiggins and they've done with other guys in the past. And another one that I'm sort of like balancing is just talking about how sort of, this is not talking about Mark Daigneault obviously, but the coach of the year in the NBA is sort of cursed, and why that's sort of gone sideways for the last few years, with like 7 of the last 10 guys all being fired or resigning. But a lot to look forward to, but mainly the AJ Mitchell one will be coming sometime this week.
Go check that out. Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube. And until tomorrow after the Timberwolves game, be good and be good to one another.